Well guys, it's time for part 2 of our cleanup and fix-up video. Today we're going to be looking mainly at the tractor. There are a number of things on the tractor that I wanted to point out to you that apply, some specifically to this tractor and some generally to other small tractors that you might be using around your property. So the idea is to keep things tidy and stay caught up with the regular maintenance of your equipment. In my previous business as a millwright was known as preventative maintenance, or a PM period. And it's a good habit to get into. Keep your shop and your work area tidy and keep your equipment properly serviced, and it will take care of you for a much longer time. All right, let's get on to the video and to the work on the tractor. So before you go too far on jobs like this, be ready for spills. So I've got my bucket of sawdust here. Of course, I've got all kinds of sawdust, so that comes pretty easy for me. And I've got some rags, and we're ready to go. So 14mm socket, let's drain this thing. So one of the things I like to do when I'm draining oil like this is to leave the dipstick in, especially to start with. That way your oil comes out much slower. Once you're confident with everything being where it's supposed to be and you've got enough volume to handle the oil that's coming out, then you can pull the dipstick out and it will come out much quicker. Now we'll get our filter wrench and get ready to change that. And while we're letting that drip as much as possible to get as much oil out, we'll check our air filter. Now like I say, you can generally just blow these out, but this is 400 hours old and it's starting to look a little gray. So I have no trouble with changing that, but I'll see what I can do to clean this one out and save it, as they're not very expensive. So as you can see, there's quite a difference between the two. So certainly nothing wrong with changing that. And I think after looking at that, probably going to throw this one out because it is really dirty by comparison. All right, we'll put this back on. Make sure you got the drain pointed to the bottom. All right, air filter done. Now all of my used oil on everything that I change kind of thing, I save and take into Canadian Tire, and Canadian Tire recycles it. So nothing gets dumped anywhere that it shouldn't get dumped. Looks like that's finished dripping. Let's get the plug in and take the filter off. So I like to use these pliers for handling filters rather than the band or strap wrenches. These are just a little easier to get in there. And as you can see, this filter is in a slightly awkward spot, as they often are. Now because the oil filter is in kind of a weird spot, it does tend to slop around a little bit when it drains. So it's hard to tell where the oil's going to go. Another good reason to be ready with spill stuff. All right, so there's my old filter. Let's see if I can do this without making a mess. And as you can see, that was labeled with the date it was put on and the number of hours on the tractor at the time it was put on. So let's get the new filter ready to go on. All right, new filter is in place. It has an O-ring seal on it, so I made sure I cleaned the mating surface very thoroughly, put some fresh clean oil on the O-ring seal, and tightened the filter up just until the O-ring touched. And then according to the manual, you give it another half turn. So that's what I've done. So we'll get this cleaned up and get the oil back in it. So according to the manual, you need 3.3 liters. And of course, I'll need a little bit over that to fill the oil filter as well. So I have got this really long spout or funnel that I bought that's very handy for doing the oil change on the tractor, because it gets down into the oil filler cap very easily, and it's also really good for doing the rear end oil change too. So I got 2 liters in there now, and this is just a little over 3. We'll dump this in and then check our dipstick and see where we are. I like to know volume rather than just dumping it in. If I know roughly or approximately how much oil is supposed to go in it, then I can pour it into this jug and I know where I am. Because now I know, without having to guess, that I'm pretty close. Yeah, according to this, I am now full. But, like I said, there's nothing in the oil filter, or very little in the oil filter at this point. So we'll put the filler cap back on and start the motor for just a minute or two. All right, let's start her up. That should be lots. Let's see where we are on the dipstick now. Yeah, according to the dipstick, we are now down just a teeny bit from being full. So we'll add another, maybe 1/4 of a liter and see where that gets us. Right on the full mark. All right, good to go. Okay, there's engine oil changed. The radiator cover has been cleaned. Air filter has been changed. Coolant looks good. So, that's got everything done under the hood there. Next thing I think I'm going to tackle is the front axle. All right, I've got the one side drained, so there's a drain plug in the bottom on both sides, and this holds a fair bit of oil. There is over 3 liters of oil in here, so most of it now will have come out on the one side here, so there should just be a little bit left in this side, and the oil looked perfectly clean, so we're changing it anyway. Now I have seen information about using the UDT oil, which is what they say in the manual, is not necessarily the right oil. That oil is too thin and tends to leak. Now, I have had no leaking issues on the steering of this at all. So I am going to stay with the UDT oil, which is the same oil that goes in the transmission in the rear end. So that side is a little bit grayer than the other side, no doubt. So definitely good to change. And there's more oil coming out of there than I thought there would be. All right, that's pretty much it. We'll let this drip for a little bit longer, put our plugs in, and refill. Okay guys, I've got all the filters changed, fuel filters, everything. All the levels are up to where they should be, but I wanted to show you this before I put it back on. This is the bro-tek skid plate for the bottom of the tractor. Now, as you can see, it's two-piece construction. And it is heavy duty. This is steel checker plate. This isn't aluminum. This thing will take a hit and protect the bottom of your tractor. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's get underneath the tractor and I'll show you everything that this thing covers. Okay guys, so we're underneath the tractor looking towards the back wheels. There's the back wheels, and you can see your transmission filter right there. So this, all of this is covered. It starts, comes out here, and then goes up on an angle, covers everything there. Now, because this is a hydrostatic transmission on these things, they need a cooling fan. This cooling fan is extremely important. It keeps your transmission oil cool, keeps the transmission cool. If that gets overheated, you're going to have a real problem. You're going to lose power, and there'll be all kinds of issues. And this is a pretty common thing that gets busted on these tractors because it's in the bush, unprotected, and those will get broken. And then you've got your fuel system. So there's one of the filters right there. There is a little pump for it, and it continues on up. So this is also all underneath the skid plate. So your skid plate comes right up to here. There is one of the attaching points right there. So it's protecting your steering, U-joint here, everything underneath this. Now there was some concerns raised by some people that because it's so covered, there won't be enough airflow going through here to properly cool things. Well, I have never had an issue with this thing overheating, not once. Now there is also a removable plate that allows you to get to your center drive. Now I don't have a mower deck. I don't use the center drive for anything. So that plate on mine is in place, and I'm not taking it off because I don't need to take it off. So it does quite a job. These two U-bolts that you see hanging down here are part of what mounts the plate in place. All right, so let's get both plates in and hooked back up, and I'll show you what it looks like with those in place. Okay guys, tractor is complete. We're gonna go put the grapple back on the front and the grader box on the back. I like having the grader box on there because it is quite heavy, so it's a good extra counterbalance. Even though this has got loaded tires, it's nice to have that extra bit of weight. So let's have a look now underneath this thing at the crash plate. See if I can give you a decent shot so you can see here just how much this plate covers. It does a real job. So there is the entrance way that you can take off to get to in case you are running a mower deck, but like I say, I'm not. So this goes right through underneath and just it covers everything. So this is a really good plate. It's definitely harder to put on and take off, no question. But as far as I'm concerned, for the protection you get from this thing, it is well worth that little bit of extra effort. This is not sheet metal. It's not going to fold up on you when you hit a rock. This is going to protect it. Let's go get things attached back to the tractor, get the tractor put away, and then I still have to change the oil on the mill. All right, guys, I've got one more thing that I want to mention on this video. We had a tragedy just yesterday down the road here from me. One of our neighbors, I didn't know him well. I knew him to see him. We had talked a couple of times, waved back and forth when we see each other. But anyway, he was out on his tractor by himself yesterday and had an accident that took his life. It's so easy for these things to happen, especially when you're doing a lot of things like I do on your own. With something like a tractor, you've got to be so careful. And this is a man with lots of experience on the tractor. Accidents can happen so easily. Remember, when you get off your tractor, put the brake on. Put that front end loader down on the ground, or anything else you've got on it. Put it down on the ground. And if you're going to be away from it from any time, shut it off. And one of my big worries with the tractor has always been not a life-threatening thing, but I've always made sure that I put the bucket down and that I put the brakes on whenever I get off the tractor, because I've always had nightmares of turning around and seeing the tractor going down the hill backwards by itself and rolling through my shop or into the Jeep or something like that. Well, this was obviously much worse, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family. So remember, guys, be careful, stay safe. All right, guys, I'm not going to bore you with another oil change video. I'm sure you've seen enough of that. I changed the oil on this. I have the 9.5 horsepower motor on this, which is the bigger option, and I change the oil on it every 25 hours. And it's still reasonably clean when it comes out, and I've had no trouble at all. And as I've said a number of times before, oil's cheap, engine rebuild isn't. So thanks very much for watching. And if you've been finding these videos interesting, or at least finding them a little bit entertaining, don't forget to give it a like, and I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and we'll see you out on the trails the next time. I think I'll just leave that drip for a half hour or so and then put the fresh oil in.